Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Leri Smith, and I am based in Los Angeles, California, in America. And so to tell my story began even before I was born. I was born premature because my dad had hit my mom in the stomach, and that led her to be rushed to the hospital. She almost died, but that left me premature, and I was born at 6 months. So I was very small. And back then, the philosophy was to put your premature baby in the shelf. I was too small for a crib, so they put me in a shelf and just left me alone crying. And so I never got a secure bond with my family, and that left a lot of abuse, verbal, mental, physical abuse my entire life. I also was born with sensory disorders. Never diagnosed, but probably autism. I played alone at school. I collected things. All of the symptoms of autism I definitely had, especially the sensory disorders with sound, sight, all those things. And it was a daily abuse. I was the scapegoat. So my mom would isolate me from my siblings and say, she would say, my kids, she would buy them gifts for their birthday. She'd buy them gifts for Christmas. And I would just have to I'd get one, but I'd have to sit and watch them get all the stuff. My sister's only a year older than me, and she would buy her clothes and get her hair done. And I had to walk around with people saying, why do you dress like that? Why do your hair not combed? Just those little things made a huge difference in my life, to the point where I didn't speak out loud until I was 32 years old. Meaning anytime anyone asked me anything, they had to keep saying, what? No one could hear anything that I said. And that left me on a profound journey. It was actually during a personal development course where I found my power and I started to hear my voice, and I made the decision to make a difference in my life and in other people's lives. And I've spent a lot of time doing personal development. I spent a lot of time learning energy healing. I became a metaphysical minister, and I also studied psychology to try to figure out what's going on and how could I cure this. I just noticed that I would carry a lot of resentment. I don't know if a lot of people experience this, but I never had a relationship that was over 3 months, maybe 3 to 6 months, except with my ex-husband. And that one lasted a year. But it was a series of 3 months, because my resentment would get so overwhelming that I'd have to leave. And my stress response was to shut down. So I would always leave jobs, relationships, communities, anything that I was part of. After 3 to 6 months, I would get so overwhelmed that I would have to quit. But my desire to be better and to find happiness was always there. So I started reading countless of books. I've probably read over 1,000 self-help books, 1,000 spiritual books. I was really dedicated to figuring out how I could just find that joy and find that contentment and find that peace of mind. And even after I took the spirituality and became a minister, even after all the personal development, the studying psychology, the energy healing, I had a breakdown. It was right after the pandemic when I was hired. I went back to school during the pandemic and I got my teaching credential. And so I began teaching special education because I really cared about and had compassion for the students, maybe because even though I wasn't diagnosed, there's something that I connected really well with the students. But when I got back after the pandemic, it was a complete mess. There was no system, there was no training. And so it just left me with overwhelm. I was having anxiety, I was having insomnia, I was having migraines every day. And within a few months, I was having severe panic attacks that made me leave my work. And when I went back to work, I had the biggest panic attack of all, and it left me with blood clots in my lungs. And then I had a severe allergic reaction to the medications, which burned my entire gastrointestinal tract. And so I wasn't eating. I had anxiety, I had depression. And after about 8 months, I was like done with life. I did not want to live anymore. And so I have a son, and, you know, as a mom, you don't want to make a choice like that, but I felt like I had no other choice. And one day I had to go and pick him up from school, and I just couldn't get out of bed. I was like, I'm done. And I kind of had this surrender, like I really gave up. And I felt myself kind of rise above my thoughts. It was like a very spiritual experience where I was able to see, wait, my thoughts are causing my trauma. And so I just started feeling into all those heavy emotions, and I started feeling them. They were just going up. And so for many days, I sat there and I just felt every emotion and every thought just kind of rise up. And after like a few days, maybe a week, I was like the happiest person that I knew. I could feel the energy in my body, and I'm like, what is this? So I started creating a system to help people who suffer from anxiety, from depression, from anxiety. And I help them to actually be able to see that our minds create all of our suffering. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And when I finally got that, I was able to see how people could transform their suffering in as little as like 10 minutes. It's really about changing your perspective about how you're viewing your life. I had been telling people, if you hang on to your drama for more than like 10 or 15 minutes, it can become trauma. And so I teach people how to monitor their thoughts, how to sit with their feelings. It's not pushing your feelings down. It's really embracing them, but embracing them without the story. Because when we can separate the facts, like this happened, this happened, this happened, from the story that we create about it, as in this means that I'll never or that I'll always be a certain way, then true healing is actually possible. And it's really important that people know that all of their suffering takes place in their mind, so that they have the power to choose what they will do next. And when I was studying the psychology, I saw, when I was reading all of the personality disorders, and I saw like the people who had the truest transformation were the ones that could monitor their thoughts, so that if they got triggered, they'd actually have a choice to choose what they were going to do. And so I saw that we have power in the pause, the power to pause our thoughts, or the power to pause our emotions, or the power to pause our actions, or even the power to pause the consequences, like beating ourselves up at the end, and actually stepping into that pause and being able to transform from victim of your life to creator of your life. And in that pause, you get to choose. I tell my clients that we're verbs. I saw a book, I didn't read it, but it was a book called like God is a Verb. And I sat there and I was like, yeah, I'm a verb. And I found the empowerment into being a verb. I found that when I'm being or doing something, I'm creating with my life. When I'm stuck in my story, I'm choosing to be a victim, and it's what's causing all of my suffering.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Larry. You said something that really reminded me of the time when I was going through my own troubles and strife. Somebody said to me, our emotions are like our children. When they come to us, you should not push them away.
Yeah.
You bring them closer, you hold them for a while, and
Mm-hmm.
then they pass through, right? So everything you're talking about resonates with me on a very, very deep level because, like I was telling you before we started this interview, I ended up collapsing with congestive heart failure because I had all this emotion trapped in my body. It had to manifest in some way. Now, you've been through a lot, and it started in your childhood, but you've had ways of coping with it. So let's start with, if you could share more about the pivotal point during your severe panic attack and the year-long battle with depression that led to your profound insights about mindset shifts. Let's start there.
That, yeah. So we all have heard about the Dark Night of the Soul. So that was a very profound Dark Night of the Soul for me. So even before that, when I got married, like I shared earlier, that I was only married for a year or so, and then we got divorced, and then I ended up getting pregnant. So even before I had my son, we had ended it. And so during my pregnancy, my dad died, my mom died. No, it was a little, my mom died before my pregnancy. My dad and two grandmothers, they all died. My whole like higher levels of family, they were all gone. So when I was pregnant with my son, I felt like I had no help. And that was one of my first moments of having a dark night of the soul. So I just wanted to, and that led me to on the spiritual path to transform my life also. But this one, because I was new and everything was exciting, I was able to transform my life. It took a few years, but I was able to transform that. But when I got to this place, I had tried everything. I'd read thousands of books. I went to seminars and workshops and spent lots of money. I was at the place where I thought there was absolutely nothing to do but to die. And it wasn't until I felt that connection and I was able to rise above and kind of see the darkness for what it was, that I was able to actually transform my life and my experiences. I was able to kind of, I guess it's like mindset, but you're separating yourself from. It was like I was separating myself from the trauma and from the tragedies and from all of that icky, dark stuff that was going down. And it felt like I can't even imagine any other way, because I was taking I guess I was taking the antidepressant. I was doing everything. And so it was it was the biggest transformation because I was able to kind of see that those stories weren't me. And even during when I teach my students, the first thing I do is I tell them, write down all your roles, your personalities, your identities, your beliefs, your opinions, your judgments. You write all that stuff down because none of those are you. And I show people how to separate themselves from all of those things. And someone might say, but I love being a Black woman, right? So why would I want to separate myself from that? But the importance is because there's negative and positive connotations in every single identity that we have.
Mm.
There's So even if I feel empowered as a Black woman, I know those stereotypes about women. I know those stereotypes about being Black. I know how society views it. And so whatever I'm holding on to, I continue to hold on to it. If I let
Yeah.
it go, I get to create who Black woman is from my higher self and from my higher power. And that's what I was able to do, like let all of that stuff go. And then for a couple of months, every night I would release human, I would release being mom, I would release all my siblings, I would release my job, I would release even the stuff that I love, like my art and my math and all that stuff. And I would just let it go because I knew that I would be able to create a more empowering version of myself just by letting go of that stuff.
So what I'm hearing is you got to a point where you became the observer of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You were looking at it from a perspective from the outside, and the true essence of you could see that this is just a story
Mm-hmm.
my mind has made up. Am I correct?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. I saw
Yeah.
in 3D or whatever that those were all stories.
Yeah.
And that none of them were me. And that I didn't ever have to associate with them again. And that they were my own creation. Like I could say, oh, my parents were abusive. But when I saw that, I created what it meant. There are a lot of people in the world that were abused and have a lot of success. They are able to jump up and overcome it. And so the part of me that couldn't do that was my story about it. It was my story about my tragedy. All the things that we think are bad, there are people who have overcome it. So if we're not overcoming it, it's because we're attached to some identity about it. And we have created that. And it's about taking personal responsibility for what you're creating in your life. Blaming, you're not allowed to blame. Like my parents were completely 100% forgiving. It was a beautiful thing to forgive my parents because I knew that I was creating my life. I'm the creator of my life. They were my spiritual teachers, teach me a lesson, but if I don't see that I'm the creator, then there's nothing I can do about it except be a victim.
So how do meditation and spirituality play a role in transforming stress, anxiety, and depression into resilience and strength?
So in that moment and in all my transformative moment, it was me connecting. It was me connecting to my higher power and to knowing that even AA has that, know that there's something out there. There's something that's greater than yourself. Mm-hmm. So the healing power is connecting to something that's greater than yourself. And just feeling that gives you a power that your mind could never, ever, ever give you. And so when I meditate, I'm able to connect to that creative part of me, like when I meditate, I connect to the creative energy that created the universe, created Earth, created life, created me, and now creates through me. And every time I say that, I feel that creative energy, and I know that I can and will do anything that I set my mind to. And that gives me resilience because it gives me this power that's way greater than the Larry Smith that was born 50 years ago. You know, it gives me way more power to do things that I never thought was possible. If I kind of saw myself stuck in like a peanut shell. And if I'm just stuck in there. But if you plant a peanut, even in the darkness and the pressure, right, it it grows up and it becomes something beautiful. But if you kind of just hold on to the peanut, it won't become its true potential. I think of it like that. And that's like a metaphor that I use when I'm thinking of do I want to grow with this or do I want to hold on to it?
Yeah. Wow. That's just crazy. So you encourage truly feeling your emotions until they fade. So we were
Yeah.
talking about this just earlier. Can you explain the importance of this process and
Yeah.
how it facilitates healing?
Okay. So I call it the feel it to heal it method. And for me, it's the number one way to heal it, because a lot of the times we try to push our emotions to the side. So what I do, and I do it every single time I'm feeling anything, is I just go within, I stop the story. I can label the story, like I can say, this feels like anxiety, right? Or this feels like anger. And I just sit with the anger and I feel it as intensely as possible. And I feel the anger and I allow it to radiate out of me and fill up the room. And I just continue to feel that anger as intensely as I can, or sadness or whatever it is, until it disappears. And then when I open my eyes, I just feel like a completely different person. And sometimes it takes 5 seconds, sometimes it takes 5 minutes, and sometimes it even takes 30 minutes. It just depends. But if you're willing to sit with it, let it be as intense as possible, then it starts to leave on its own. A lot of people say emotion is energy in motion. It really is. It's energy in motion. Allow that energy to move. A lot of our illnesses are created because we don't allow that stuck energy to move, and it sits in our body. Everything is formed first in your mind, and then it forms into the real world. So if you can stop those thoughts before they become something more harmful, then you can let it go then, versus dealing with it once it forms as an illness in your body. And after you sit with that emotion and you let it disappear, you have the opportunity to find out what you really want, and you can create that instead. So if you're sitting with anger and you let it go and you ask yourself, what do I really want? And you might say contentment or peace of mind. And then you feel that peace of mind come in, and you feel that as intensely as possible. You let it radiate out. You let it fill the room. You breathe it in, you soak it up, and then you open your eyes once you feel that peace of mind or that contentment.
I love that. Now, what does connecting with the universal oneness within us mean? And how can individuals start this journey?
So connecting with oneness, I really believe that there's like one life, and that you are already part of that one life. And it's basically your awareness of being part of that one life that allows you to connect with it. If you're if all of your energy is in your mind, you're kind of separating yourself from that. You're creating yourself as an individual, and then you have to kind of fight and conquer the world on your own. But when you connect with the light of the universe, I'll just feel the light coming from way up, and I just allow it to come and enter through my crown and fill my mind, fill all of my senses, fill my body with that light. And I know, like, I can feel in each cell the light and the consciousness and the energy and the flow and the connection to the universe, just by allowing it to come in through the top of my crown and fill my entire body with that light.
That is beautiful. Can you provide examples of how challenging moments like grief, loss, and job changes can be transformed into opportunities for greatness?
Yes. Okay. So One of my clients, her husband died about 4 years ago, and she'd been in grief the entire time. Like she said before that she was the most joyous, happy, loving person. She was always doing things, but after that, she stayed at home. She never did anything. She didn't connect with her friends or anybody. And every time she looked at photos of her old life with her husband, they were together for I think 30 years. She would just feel sadness and she would just cry. And I helped her to see that she could still love her husband, but that she could also connect to that joy that she experienced with him when she would look at her photos. That if she could sit with and change her perspective about what it means to be a widow, if she could change her perspective about how she's supposed to live, or like being sad widow versus creating that new life, that new life that she loves and that would bring her joy. And that, yes, it's a transformation. Her life is never going to look like it looked when she was married, but that doesn't mean that her life has stopped or ended. That means that she has the time and the power to create something else. And it might not look like getting remarried. It might look like finding new friends or new communities. And after our first session, she said she was able to look at the pictures, of all her pictures, with joy, and she was able to love and feel that excitement. And then every time we worked together, she would just be able to transform all of that. And now she's joined a community. She's traveling with friends. She's traveling with family. She's exercising and walking her dog, and she's just doing all that stuff. And she was able to create herself as a new woman and not think about what she lost, but to actually think about what she could create, like given her circumstances. It's like, yeah, would she rather have that life? But she has to kind of look at what she does have now and create from there. I also had a client who she struggled with, I mean, she had sexual abuse by her stepdad when she was in her teens. And even though she's in her 60s now, it kind of like took everything, like her whole life she never lived up to her true like power and potential, because that just played heavily like on her mind and all of the choices that she made. And she wanted a connection with her siblings. And her siblings kept inviting her to lunch, and they kept inviting her to join a club that they started, but she would get resentment every time they spoke. She wanted them to acknowledge what her stepdad did. She wanted them to she couldn't quite even know what she wanted, but she just knew she wanted them to like acknowledge what happened to her and feel her pain, stop talking to their dad, and like all of those things. And I helped her to transform that. You're saying that you want to be this powerful woman and you saying you want to transform your abuse, and your siblings are there. They're not acknowledging the abuse. They're pulling you in as that powerful woman that you say that you want to be. And so you have to let go of your story about it, accept the relationship just like it is, know that they're never going, because they're all in their 60s. They're never going to give you what you want, but to know that you don't need it, to know that you don't ever want to be seen like the victim anyways. And when she was able to transform, like, I don't want to be a victim. They're not seeing me as a victim, which means I can go and have a full relationship with them as that resilient, healed person that they're trying to tell me I already am. She was able to get past it. And did she struggle with that? She did, but she started saying yes to all of their invitations. And eventually she was able to actually just be with them and be with other people without having to be that victim, because she would tell the story to anyone who would listen.
Yeah.
So she was able to let go of that story and actually be that person that she truly wanted to be.
Yeah. So what practical steps can someone take to start viewing their setbacks as catalysts for a purposeful and inspiring life?
So I would say that your first step is to really be willing. You have to be willing to start monitoring your thoughts. Be willing to separate your story from the facts that happen. Like if you had abuse, you were abused, you physically, but separate what you made that mean for you, what you said you could or could not do, how you, all the things that you created because of that, and to actually start taking responsibility for that and for all of those thoughts and the story that you created from that trauma. And when you're able to start separating yourself from that story, you'll start to little by little find that little space that you have some control over. You might have to do it 100 times a day, but start finding that little space between your thoughts and what you're actually going to do next, because that's where your power is. So you find that space, and then when you finally have enough of it, then you can start really noticing that emotion that that story's creating, sitting with it for 5 minutes to 30 minutes, letting it go, but actually creating what you want to do instead. Who do you want to be? What do you want to have? How do you want to act? What do you really want? Like, do you really want the ice cream, or do you really want to the peace of mind that you're saying? Like, it just depends on what you want. I was
It's a
trying to make,
choice. You always have a choice.
yeah, and to really gain that power of choice between your thoughts and what you do next.
So, how do you integrate psychology and personal growth techniques into your coaching to empower individuals on their transformative journeys?
Okay. So I start with psychology when I have people identify their like I said earlier, their roles, their personality, their all of the stories that they created about themselves, and when they start to dismantle those stories that they created about themselves. And a big part of my system is transforming from victim to creator. From victim is that storyteller. Creator is the action, the verb that actually does things. So the personal growth is you becoming the creator, you seeing yourself as a verb, you taking steps to do what you set out to do. Write them down, take steps, monitor the traumatized self. The traumatized self will never heal. When I learned that, I didn't have to spend all my energy trying to heal it anymore. The traumatized self will always be the victim. So stepping out of that victim place and into that creator place and being the energy, doing what needs to be done, monitoring when the victim, will it cry and shout and try to grab you? Yes. But monitoring the victim every time it comes out, soothe it. You can do self-soothing techniques. You can listen to it. You can feel that emotion that is trying to arise, but just don't identify with it anymore. Become the creator and get done what you set out to do.
I love
and you can do all that within a couple of minutes. Like it sounds like it's a long thing, but it's like, oh, I want to write this story. And then you go, oh, but I'm so tired. And you go, no, you sit with it. And then you go and you write the story after.
I love it. My last two questions are a bit of a thought experiment. And we are going to teleport you into your past, to that young woman who was down, depressed, suffering, and trapped in her story. If you could go back and have a conversation with her and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
I think I would go back to my 12-year-old self, because that's when I decided that I was going to go to UCLA, and I decided to start getting really good grades. And then that's when the beating and the jealousy from my mom got really intense. And so I would go back to her and tell her that it's I don't know. I think I would just tell her. It's hard to say. Like maybe to start watching and making sure that you know who you really are. Like you see that power, you see what you're capable of, you can see what you can do, and for me to continue to strive forward and to strive higher and to keep that energy that I felt when I was doing well at school, and to know that I could apply that energy into my personal life. Like to start watching the stories that I'm creating about what it means to be abused every day. Because I remember after my mom would do that, she would say, "But you're strong, you can handle it." And I would be like, "No, I'm not strong." Like maybe to demystify what strong means, so that I can. I guess I didn't want to be strong because when she would call me strong, it felt disempowering. But to actually like feel that strength that I actually did have without disempowering it. And the third thing that I would do was I would show her um, how beautiful she is and how loving she is and how wonderful she is, and really show her, like, I think I would just give her a big hug and show her that she's not alone, and that all the people in the world are not your mom and dad, and that the people in the world can love you and connect with you.
It's awesome. Now let's go into the future, and we're going to go and have a conversation with the 90-year-old you.
Huh? Okay.
You're sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your children, your grandchildren. If you could teleport into the future and have a conversation with this wise woman who's led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
I would see, I think I would ask her, I would see that joy, and I can see her giggling all the time. I can see her enjoying the scenery around her, enjoying like when she's looking out the window, just enjoying the small things in life. I can see her just appreciating the people that come to visit. So it'd probably be more like, um, I just see her sitting in her rocking chair and just enjoying what's there, not trying to like go and conquer the world and do all of these things, but to know that that life force that's inside of her, and that joy that's inside of her, and that peace that's inside of her, is that like that's all that she needs, and she can still in her rocking chair be happy and joyous.
I love asking that last question because a lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already in us.
Mm-hmm.
She's already guiding us. She's that little voice that says, go left, go right, say yes, say no. But we are always looking outside of ourselves for the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a journey within that gives us everything we need. So thank you so much for coming online today and sharing your amazing story with us. I know that you coach, you mentor, you support women. I've got your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Is there anything else I should have asked you and I didn't? Or
I
have
know.
I done it?
I had
Oh.
such a good time. I really loved the going into the future as a 90-year-old self, and I got to see like what was really important to me, and that was kind of inspirational to see that I don't need all of that stuff, and that what I need is already inside of me. I love that.
Wonderful. Larry, thank you so much for coming online and gracing us with your presence today. It's always an honor when I meet women who are on the forefront of empowering other women, helping us with tools, dealing with mental health issues. Our minds can take us to very, very dark places. And I think you're really providing a space for women to learn how to harness their minds and transform their lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is a social impact movement. We are attracting women from all over the world to share their stories. We share our stories to uplift you, inspire you, energize you, but most importantly, to empower you. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Larry.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.